Georgia, Florida, not a top 10 rivalry in college football, according to the geniuses at The Athletic. Look, y'all, we got to do better than this. That's just stupid. Do you know who's ranked in front? I'll give you, if you had Minnesota and Wisconsin as a bigger or better or whatever top rivalry over Georgia, Florida, you win the big prize. Like, what, like, really? Like, I'm not going to start yelling because it's so stupid. It is so stupid to write like what are you talking about? That is the dumbest thing you can. I can't remember the last time I watched Minnesota play. I think their coach is still PJ Fleck. Did I get that right? Like, no one cares. Literally no one cares. Here's their top 10. Ohio State, Michigan, number 1. Everybody's going to put that. It should be Alabama, Auburn, but I'm not going to fight that. They got that at 2. At 3, they have Texas, Oklahoma. That's the same. It's the same game as Georgia, Florida. Hello? What are you doing? I've got other ones that are worse. Just hold on. Army, Navy at 4. Look, I'm gonna do it. All right. God bless the troops. All that, the pomp, the circumstance, all that. That's great. But that is not a bigger game than some of these other games that are listed. But I think we feel like we got to do that. It's a well-watched game. The game doesn't matter in the world of college football. In the world of spectacle and being really cool, it's one of the great American sporting events. It does not matter outside of that. SC Notre Dame, yeah, in the 60s, that game is irrelevant and has been irrelevant with the exception of one game for an extremely long period of time. And here we go again with the stupidity, all right? Oklahoma, Nebraska. They've played twice in the last 30 years. You have that as the number 6 rivalry in college football? Really? That game used to be, they have not been in the same league for 20 years almost. What are we talking? Why don't we include Tulane LSU, right? It's beyond absurd. So the top 10, they had Minnesota, Wisconsin, Florida, Florida State. Look, Florida, Florida State, that used to be awesome. It is no longer awesome. It's not been awesome for a long, long time. Let's just be honest. Penn State, Ohio State, they played 40 times total. Just because 2 teams are good brands, like Georgia LSU, for instance, they have had some classic games. You would never put that as a top 10 rivalry. I don't understand where some of this comes from. Miami, Florida State at 7. Nebraska, Oklahoma at 6. But Nebraska, Oklahoma, to put that out there, Nebraska, Oklahoma, it's 1973. Stop it. That was 50 years ago that these games were playing. They have not had a consequential game against each other probably since the 80s. If that. You don't have Georgia, Florida in your top 10? That is crazy. And you have Wisconsin, Minnesota. Do they play football? I thought they just played hockey up there. Bro, we got to do better than this. I'm begging people. When you come up with these lists in the summertime and you're doing your whole thing, you got to stop it. You got to have, some of these got to be based in reality. It can't be that we say, oh, this game's been played. I haven't looked up and down. North Carolina, Virginia is going to be included on this list, I think, simply for the fact that they played 130-something times. That Georgia, Auburn have played, however many games. That's a bad example. I'm going to correct myself right now because Georgia-Auburn is a legitimately big game. It's a legitimate rivalry. They played against each other for championships. Bad example. What I was going to say was just because a game has been played over 100 times, because Tech, Georgia, all right? Georgia has 3 rivals. That's what they've got. Now, in the sense of this thing, they're going to go with a lot of different stuff. But, that a game has been played a bunch doesn't mean it's a rivalry. Kentucky, Georgia. That a game has been, games have to matter. Minnesota, Wisconsin was probably on the Big Ten Network this last year. All right? It probably has been on that network for a while. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. When was the last time Wisconsin played a game when was the last time Wisconsin played a New Year's Six game? Like when Ron Dane was there? Surely they played since, yeah, they have, because Brett Bielema was the coach. But like Minnesota, have they gotten past 9 wins more than once in the last 20 years? I don't know the answer to that, which tells you all you need to know about that. And then Nebraska, Oklahoma, look, I'm just kidding. Nebraska sucks. I've been out there. Stadium is big and nice and all this stuff. They love the Huskers. They have not mattered in football since this century. They haven't. We're going on 25 years. Like, it would be the equivalent of in the 1990s being like, yeah, but Georgia Tech Tulane was a great rivalry because they were both really good in this, in the 50s. Like, stop the stupidity, man. We got to stop this stuff. You want my top 10? This is just going off the top of my head. I mean, you can't do anything other than Bama, Alabama, Auburn, and Ohio State, Michigan as your top 2. After that, I think you got some room to play. But I saw USC, UCLA in the top 15. Literally, the schools don't care. They don't go to the games. Like Georgia, Florida, this is not so much about Georgia, Florida as much as it is, dude, we got to quit lying to people and being disingenuous about stuff. Like, that's it. I remember watching SC UCLA when I was a child. That was a cool game. I don't think they've ever had, both of them, a 10-win season in the same year this century. I don't think so. I remember UCLA stopping USC from winning a national championship one year in a massive upset. I think it was at the Orange Bowl. It might have been at Coliseum. Like, that game is really cool because it's got the colors. You're talking about Los Angeles, which is a really neat town, particularly in December because it's not freezing. Like, there's a lot neat about that game. But I'm going to tell you right now, you got that in front of the Egg Bowl, those people in Mississippi are crazy town. And, like, we don't, this might be a big take. I would almost go Clemson, Carolina in front of UCLA, USC. I don't know. I would almost. So, like, when I think about big rivalry games that like, oh man, I'm not going to miss that. I'm not going to miss the Egg Bowl unless there's like, I want to watch that. I do want to watch Texas, Oklahoma. It's usually when Georgia plays Tennessee, or it was in the past. It's not always the easiest game for me to catch because usually that game is right before Georgia Tennessee kicks. Georgia Florida, obviously I never miss that game for Auburn Alabama, and Ohio State Michigan. Those are setting games. Those are games that seasons are defined and you think about all that's happened with Auburn, Alabama over the last, however many years. Just say since Kick 6. They had played some wild games. You tell me the last wild Oklahoma-Nebraska game you remember. Okay? What about Wisconsin and Minnesota? Why don't we just throw in Iowa State in the top 15 while we're at it? Like, none of this stuff has to make sense. No one in their right mind would put Louisville and Kentucky in the top 50 of a rivalry, and yet we're going to go ahead and just be like, yeah, they play a lot, and Paul Bunyan's axe, or whatever the dumb thing is up there. Like, Georgia, Florida is a cultural event. The schools know it. It is an iconic American event, quite frankly. Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama, the Egg Bowl is its own weird thing. I think Florida State, is a classic rivalry. It's a new one. Miami, Florida State, I would say is a top 25 rivalry, but it used to be top 3. It's not now. And so some of these things are fluid. At no point in my lifetime could anyone really justify putting Minnesota and Wisconsin in any game they play in this. And I want to go back to Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State, Penn State, that's not, so the problem is Penn State, because they don't have a rival. Ohio State has Michigan. Michigan has Ohio State. Michigan has Michigan State. Penn State's just kind of hanging out there because they don't play Pitt. And they were lost in the wilderness, and for such a long time they've never really won big games. They don't win their league. They're still new in their league. They are essentially, this is the wrong way to put it, they are South Carolina. They're kind of on the eastern end of the conference. They can't find a rival. South Carolina can't find one. Just the brand name of Penn State is so much bigger than South Carolina. But it's hard to say that's I'm sure it's a rivalry in the sense of the word, but that would be the same as like Maryland, Penn State. I don't know. Like, if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And it's that game does not transcend the country, I would say. It's a big game. A lot of people watch that game, but that's not a game where you're sitting there going, I really need to see this. It's like Missouri, Arkansas, that's a bad. That's even worse example. It's far more, I would say, like Georgia, LSU, which is, these are two huge brands, and they're usually pretty good. And sometimes, like in the case of Georgia, LSU, they play these wacky games. They play important games. They play games that are, important, big games. But in terms of like rivalry, people don't understand the meaning of the word. First of all, they want to put that word on every game that's been played for a long time. That's where we're really messing this up. Like Tech, Georgia, that's a rivalry. That is not an important rivalry, but in the grand scheme of things for the world and the country, I would argue Auburn, LSU is a more important rivalry than Tech, Georgia. I would argue that, it's just hard to explain that rivalry to people not from the state. The Egg Bowl, I think, is self-explanatory. We got a bunch of crazies. We're all lined up. It's Thanksgiving or near Thanksgiving. Day after, we're going to do some dumb things. We may embarrass the state. We'll see. And a wild ending is probably happening. Florida State, for all the weirdness in Florida, that game sort of captures it. Sort of. Not every time. And they used to have great football, those two programs. They don't so much anymore. Like, if you were to say, in the history of the world, Florida State, Florida, that's a bigger game than Georgia, Florida. I don't know. But they're in the same discussion. Minnesota, Wisconsin, like that to me negates everything. That negates everything on the list. It makes no sense. And we gotta quit acting like Army, Navy is the same thing as something. It's its own weird deal. It's like, it's not like all of these other games at all, and that makes it special. But it's not the same as Georgia, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. That's very similar to Georgia, Florida. I would argue it's basically the same thing except with hats. One is at the ocean, the other one's at a state fair. One is, everybody's drunk. The other one is everybody's getting fried butter or whatever. So they're similar in that now they're SEC brands and all this stuff. But the putting the Minnesota, Wisconsin thing in there is like saying, Arkansas and Texas A&M had a great rivalry. They played each other for 150 times. And no, man. Some of these things are not like the other. I will not allow Oklahoma, Nebraska. I will not allow Wisconsin, Minnesota. They are not permitted. You want to shove Penn State, Ohio State in there? I think that there's a case for that. I just don't think it translates the same as some of it. I don't think you have to explain Alabama, Tennessee. I think it is, two brands that have played each other forever. It has a nickname. What is the nickname for Penn State, Ohio State? I have no idea. I don't know. Georgia's rivalries, they all have, the three of them, they have nicknames. Now, Georgia has other big games. Georgia has other big games they play. They play Tennessee every year. I don't know if that'll continue. I don't know. You know, Georgia plays South Carolina a lot. Georgia lately has played Clemson a lot. There's no rivalry. There's no name to those rivalries. Why are you driving so fast? It is 25 through here. We can't see. There's people that are parking on the street. You're driving 45. You're going way too fast. But at the end of the day, you know, these games, there's got to be, it has to be based in reality. Like Alabama LSU has got to be given the respect it deserves. It cannot be behind Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's got to be given the respect it deserves. That's not Alabama, Mississippi State we're talking about. These are games that matter a ton, that sell out every time, and that people watch. And we cannot put these moronic lists out here with obvious, like, don't come at me with Tulane LSU. That's basically what you did with Minnesota, Wisconsin. You're saying, oh, they play every year, and like there's 30,000 people watching, or 50,000. It ain't 90,000 people. You know, Alabama, Tennessee, that game matters. They smoke cigars after that game, the winner, okay? Georgia, Florida, go down there for that one and see what that's like. Florida State, Florida, that game is massive. Even as where those programs are at right now, that game is massive. The Iron Bowl, like all these games, they matter a ton. And you're really being disingenuous with putting very specifically Nebraska, Oklahoma, who have not been in the same league for God knows how long, 15 years now? And have not played and they were not in the same division, I don't even think. So it's just not, the answer is no. And they did that to themselves. Georgia, Florida would never cancel that series. That's basically what Nebraska, Oklahoma did. And then, like, so what's the rationale for keeping Oklahoma, Nebraska, and they never play? And the important games they played were in the 70s or the 60s. You know, Oklahoma really went on bad times in the 80s, and Nebraska's been bad since this century. So I don't, you know, I think sometimes people get too cute. Just be smart with these lists. It's getting a little bit out of control. That's all I got to say.